The climate emergency became the new pandemic. Carbon emissions reached a critical point, and humans were close to extinction. Human movement was thwarted, and new lockdown measures restricted us further. But most seemed to become complacent to it, embracing their imprisonment. Traveling was banned, and we had reached a point where even breathing air was a crime. Food production became completely regulated. Farming was illegal. This was expected to save the planet and save us from extinction. With food production levels heavily monitored and people's bodies wired, they could now be fully automated. AI had become the perfect data dialysis machine tool, working inside the human body and feeding all the data back to the central AI system. They had found what they now needed to create the next world. We had pandemic after pandemic, ranging from various variants to cyber attacks, a climate crisis and a war between the East and West. The fear machine was everlasting. What started as the protection of our health soon evolved into hell on Earth. Humans' higher sensory perception had been prevented from developing naturally and was invaded by a parasitic force. The reality was that most people were simply still in a state of shock and paralysis that their governments could act in such a barbaric manner. The climate emergency became the modern-day illusion of a crusade, and they believed they were doing God's work in the eyes of their masters. All of society, including the leaders who led the kings and queens, would be slaughtered after the central AI was built. However, even they seemed ignorant and still masqueraded in society's pantomime. Every single person on every level was sleepwalking into the jaws of hell. They pushed every piece of fear they could, and we had to be strong to get through those days. Not least because of them, but because of the reaction of everyone else. People policed each other in every aspect of life, mainly due to their own personal breakdowns within and not being able to have any control of the situation. This was not the science. This was a technocratic takeover only leading us to a dead dystopian society where we could barely exist.
An illusion will be created so vast, so large that it escapes their perception. Those who see it will be thought of as insane.
What's up, YouTube? It's Biblical Truther. I first want to thank Scariest Movie Ever channel for that clip of one of his videos. I felt like it was very pertinent to the future that we are going to have to endure. And this goes back to the last few videos that I've made, one of which was about the new 10 Commandments that was brought down from Mount Sinai here just recently in regards to Mother Earth, or the climate, so to speak. So in this video, she calls it a new threat, if you will, a scam, epidemic type, if you get my meaning. So later on in the film, she also says we were hit after these scams over and over and over, but she talked about the food and how farming was illegal and that they killed all the livestock. Well, I just recently made a video about li-fi and my theory on why these animals over the last couple of months have been walking in circles, and all this footage has been caught or captured via however they did it, because I'm sure every farm owner has a drone to be able to catch these aerial shots, right? So what if this was another beta test to say that the animals are sick? Because if it's a year from now, most people won't even remember that this even took place. But just as the beginning of the last demic, we heard about the zombie deer virus and all this other type of stuff about the deer, mainly up in Northern America and whatnot. I don't remember exactly how many places it occurred, you know, quote unquote, happened in. But what if this is the beta test so that they would have that in their arsenal later in order to do this, to take away farming? in all aspects, not just growing your own food, but raising your own livestock, right? So what if that was the test for later on when they declare all this stuff and start taking all our quote-unquote rights? Because there's a lot of people that believe we shouldn't have the rights that we have now, which is crazy. And I'm talking about people here in America who are anti-constitutionalists but yet call themselves Republicans and conservatives. It's just crazy. It's mind-boggling. But she also talked about bodies being wired. You remember the Internet of Bodies or the Internet of Things? How and what happened for them to be able to do that? Well, I think that's already taken place. Well, just watch videos that you can't find on YouTube anymore. Go to BitChute or Rumble, and there's, you know, droves of videos about how people are going to be implanted with certain type of technology, right? So we have the Internet of Things, and we have the whole Bill Gates, his what's it called? The 060606 patent about how they're going to use us to harvest energy and basically use us as currency. It just falls right in line with what she was talking about. And she also talked about the fear machine, because that's what a lot of this stuff is. And given that billions of people allowed themselves to be infested with these parasitic technologies after the last demic, then you can kind of see how you know, the Internet of Things, bodies, whatever you want to call it, is gonna take shape. But also, as far as the fear machine, she talked later in the video about how people's higher sensory perception was no longer developing naturally. Well, how would that happen? Perhaps a technological intervention? But anyway, back to the other portion. It says that it all started with, you know, people thinking that they were having their health protected. And ain't that what people's already learning now after the last, last 2 years, and what's kind of unfolded after people allowed themselves to be technologically altered? I think so. And then she talks about a parasitic force, which is also funny because I've shared Jerry Marzinski, I think is how you pronounce his last name, a couple of times. I've carried a couple of his interviews where he talks about schizophrenic people and how the voices that they hear are not just random hallucinations, that they're very meticulous. And out of hundreds of people that he researched and talked to, all hundreds of those people, 100% of that group, all had the same type of things being told to them by these voices. And one of the things that he come to realize was that these voices would then start messing with him, and got very offended to be called parasites. And a lot of people in the New Age movement also say that you have these loose parasite entities that attach to you and drain you of your energy. Well, what if these same parasites that they're talking about are the same ones that are causing these schizophrenic people to hear voices? Because he's done some very, very good studies and has been silenced for the most part by the medical mafia, that they can't talk about it, just like a guy I'm working with right now, his wife has a blood disorder where it gets real thick and her heart has trouble pumping it, so she has to stay on blood thinners and have her blood tested every 3 days. And I put him in touch with some videos where I learned a lot of holistic stuff in the past, that he started, giving her a simple red wine and beet juice mixture. And within a week's time, her doctor had called and said, I don't know what's going on, but I want you to stop taking your medicine. Just take the baby aspirin until you come to your next appointment. So she goes to her next appointment, and they took some blood work and rushed the results back. and they were puzzled as to why her blood's not clotting like it used to. Well, for one, the medical mafia, they will not cure you of anything, first and foremost, but holistically is where it's at. And that's just my opinion. But if I can, cure my wife's MRSA and her epilepsy, and had a hand in helping my co-worker's wife stop having to take all the medication she was on for that disorder, maybe there's something to holistic medicine that everyone should be looking into, because these people who have this revolving door of doctor visits for you because they won't write you multiple prescriptions over multiple months. They want you to come in every single month to get your 1 month prescription. I find a problem with that. But that could also be contributing to this higher sensory perception not developing naturally anymore, as this girl said. Even though this video is kind of hypothetical, it pretty much lays out exactly what's ahead for the world, for humanity. But another thing I thought was interesting in this, she mentions that the climate was the new crusades, where people thought they were doing God's will by policing each other. And I thought that was pretty crazy, because TruthStreamMedia just recently did a video where she was talking about the Stanford prison experiment, where these people, well, you'd have to go look that up for yourself. For sake of time, I'm not going to get into it, but I will link her video, or their video, in the description so you can watch it for yourself. But it's very pertinent to this discussion as well, in the fact that the last 2 years is also a beta test, not to mention, what the outcome was, and people allowing themselves to be technologically, well, you get what I'm saying. But anyway, it's pertinent in that people were policing each other during those times, even young people, older people, middle age, it didn't matter, of all ages, they were policing each other, screaming, "Oh, you gotta put a mask on, oh, you're all up in my 6 feet." I was talking to my guy at work today, and he was telling me about how his father-in-law was in the drive-thru at a Taco Bell and wasn't wearing a mask in his own truck, and the person at the window would not give him his food, and he stayed there and caused a scene till the police came, and they made her give him his food because he's in his own vehicle. They can't enforce that in his own vehicle. So she was made to give him his food, which is pretty crazy. But that just goes to show herd mentality, and how this Stanford experiment pretty much lays it out on how people tend to act when they're given this, I won't say a God complex, but you aren't better than thou, who are the people who are questioning things. Those of you who fall in line and stay in line and, go with what you're told, and make sure you're good little screen watchers, and, news, paying attention to the news and the commercials and all the things, the propaganda that they put out there. Those people are better than all the dissenters, right? Well, perhaps that was just a beta test for the next one also, as well as these, the new 10 commandments, where people are going to consider themselves high and mighty and doing God's will, as she said in this video, by policing each other, calling the cops or calling whoever, whichever climate authorities there will be in the area or in the country at that time, or all around the world for that matter.
708,
Okay.
paper plastic.
Plastic. That's the magic word. Green police. You picked the wrong day to mess with the ecosystem, plastic boy.
Battery! Let's go! Take the house! Come on! Put the rind down! Sir! That's a compost infraction!
Oh! Did you install these bulbs?
Tragedy strikes tonight where a man has just been arrested for possession of an incandescent light bulb.
What do you guys think about plastic bottles now?
The water setting is at 105.
You got a TDI here?
Clean diesel.
You're good to go, sir. Back to those styrofoam cups you're drinking from?
Yeah.
Gentlemen, please step out of the car and put them on the hood.
So perhaps that was just a beta test to see if people would fall for it and start, treating the way a lot of us were treated during the beginning of this thing. And not only the beginning, it went on for a good year before people started chilling out, It's pretty sad, man, but this whole thing where you have mass amounts of students in college, supposed to be our up-and-coming brightest superstars of the workforce, the slave force, don't want to hear anything about the deniers, proof that this stuff is not happening. If you look through history, the climate has always changed. It's always been an up and down, and you can go to Scariest Movie Ever channel, and he's been posting a lot of stuff over the last couple months back on YouTube, and you can see some of his videos actually cover some of this stuff, so go check him out. But one thing I wanted to tie this in with is the new president over there in the Middle East, in that little place that thinks they're real, the Israel people over there, Net-Yahu, that guy, I'm trying not to say straight up his name, but I got a little clip I'm going to play here in just a minute, and I've also played some clips, back in the day, in the past, and old videos, and probably on my older channel, where he outright talks about destroying, the U.S., and how they care nothing about the people in this country. But I want to play this clip because I want you to hear what he's got to say and how this is possible. If you're familiar with Oracle, it's like a mass worldwide data harvesting tool owned by none other than Jared Kushner. And just recently at the soccer World Cup, there was pictures that were circulated around with Jared Kushner and Elon Musk standing right close to each other with a bunch of Saudis in the bleachers while they watched the football.
He came out of COVID first. I described that in my book, My Conversations with Albert Bourla of Pfizer. And I persuaded him to give tiny Israel the necessary vaccines to get us out first from the COVID. And the reason I could do that is because we have a database. 98%, a medical database, 98% of our population has digitized medical records and little card. And anywhere you go in any hospital in Israel, north, south, doesn't make any difference. Boom, you punch it in and you know everything about this patient for the last 20 years. I said, we'll use that to tell you whether these vaccines, what do they do to people, not individual people, not with their individual identities, but statistically, what does it do to people with, meningitis? What does it do to people with high blood pressure? What is it? You want to know that. So Israel became, if you will, the lab for Pfizer. And that's how we did it. We got it out and we gave the information to the world. Not only, it's been published in medical magazines and so on. That's a database we have. I intend to bring on that database of personal medical records for entire population, a genetic database, genomes, okay? Give me a saliva sample, volunteer. But I'm sure most people would do it. Maybe we'll pay them. Now we have a genetic record on a medical record of a robust population. You have to have diversified populations. We have people from 100 lands. This is a very powerful engine. Now let pharma companies, let medical companies, let them run algorithms on this database, okay? I'm telling you right away that I'll give preference for a few years to Israeli firms, but you can create, and then to the world, but you can create, a biotechnological industry that is unheard of right now, unimagined even. And these are just the examples. So we can become stave off Iran, become a light unto the nations in groundbreaking.
So for all you conservative Christian people who think Elon's out for your best interests, For one, he's trying to put you in the Internet of Things via brain chips and whatnot, which is just crazy to me how anybody could think that, that's just benign. But they're all in cahoots. That's what I want to mainly say here. And how we're going to get to where we're going is going to be by compliance, consent of the governed. And I wish I'd have saved the clip from back in the day. It was in the House of Representatives. They were going through doing, a bunch of little representatives getting up there speaking. And man, if I could have had a counter for how many times they were talking about how they need the consent of the governed, it'd probably be in the hundreds in this one 30-minute lecture that this guy, some representative, talked about that day. But if you have, C-SPAN or whatever, I'm sure you can go back and find that. And it's always talked about in there when they're doing their little talks, supposedly working things out for the people and whatnot. It's all about the consent of the governed. It's all about consent, period. So for everyone who goes along with this in the future, and there's going to be billions, probably the same billions who are technologically altered, who can no longer think for themselves, and how'd she put it, their higher sensory perception was not developing naturally. Those will be the people who is going to police everyone else. The police don't even have to be there. These people, just as she said, wanted to be in lockdown. They loved it. They asked for it. And that's kind of how the Hegelian dialectic happens, how they're able to do this to us, because they create the problem, wait for the action, the reaction, which is the people begging for a solution that they already have. Kind of like after September back in 2001, where they had the Patriot Act ready to go. And old Biden was the author, was he not? Ain't that what I heard not too long ago, that he authored that bill? But it was ready to go, thousands of pages long, in a matter of days. Just, somebody had that kind of time to write this up and pass it into law, which kind of abridged the Constitution. And that's another thing. Has anyone read the Constitution lately? Or not the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. I was reading that the other day, and when one of the writers was going through all the things that was happening in England and this monarchy or whatever over there, what they were doing to the people of the 13 colonies is a lot like what's going on today, almost exactly. One of which my wife showed me a meme yesterday. It's like, didn't they declare independence because of taxation? Because they said taxation was illegal. So I don't know, I'm taxed cradle to grave. Everything I put my hands on has a tax to it. I don't even own my own land, even though the deed's in my name. If I don't pay my taxes, they take my land. So how is that freedom? I don't own anything. They just give you a deed and call you a tenant on your own deed just because you don't know what you're looking at. But anyway, I wanted to make this video just because this is the next thing, man. I think everybody's been talking about this new round table discussion that old Billy Goats just did with a bunch of world leaders, and it's the same as Event 201. And we know, the whole event went live 2 months later. Even Mike Pompeo said that we are in a live exercise. And it worked perfectly for them. People policed each other. They didn't even have to lift a finger. It was sad to watch. It was sad to watch. And people are still wearing those things, still calling people out. Still, some people not even leaving their homes because they're scared. I see people all the time walking down the road with those muzzles on, and nobody around. It's just sad. It's really sad. But anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go. I want you to think on this. But yeah, check out that video from TruthStreamMedia and see how this herd mentality will only get worse in the future, especially when people refuse to think for themselves. Love you guys.
Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints,